Chapter 3, The Return. G'day everyone, Rune here, and this is Chapter 3 of my rebooted What If Sonic Was Created by Gerald Robotnic story. If you're new to this story, click the link in the description below to be taken to the playlist. Now let's begin the next chapter. While Amy is dealing with the annoyance that is collision chaos, Sonic is making his way through Quartz Quadrant. He'd heard about the beauty of this area when he'd been asking around about Little Planet. About bright green and purple crystals that caught the light and scattered it in spots of rainbows. The crystals are so sought after that mining operations often start up whenever Little Planet makes its appearance. Now, however, all Sonic can see are old, dead mines completely emptied of their crystals. Now all that remains are walls of metal and stone, in such a state of disrepair that parts are falling from the ceiling. Rusted conveyor belts, once used to move mined crystals, now move uselessly, their only purpose now, seemingly, to get on Sonic's nerves. If he wanted to run on a treadmill, he'd go to the gym, thanks. At long last, he reaches the next special ring and touches it. Once again, it brings him to a pocket dimension, filled with odd UFO-like things. Only this time, there are these strange segments of the path that send him flying forward, open and shut like a mouth, and some with fans. When he looks up, he sees that the timer also has slightly less time. Do the trials get harder the more time stones they have? Well, that certainly complicates things. Thankfully, this trial isn't much harder than the first one he did, so he's able to blast through it without issue, earning the purple time stone. However, he's in for quite a nasty surprise when he exits the trial and returns to Quartz Quadrant. Just as his feet touch the ground, there's the loud boom of an explosion from further down the tunnel. Worried that whatever is causing the noise could cause the cave to collapse, he runs towards it. After a few seconds, he arrives at a cavernous part of the tunnels, where he sees a teenaged fox fighting a blue robot that looks like a hedgehog. Without a moment's hesitation, Sonic jumps in, clocking the robot in the side of the head with a roundhouse kick. With there now being two opponents, the robot calculates that the odds are too stacked against it and it retreats. Just as Sonic is breathing a sigh of relief, the fox speaks up, his voice both similar and different. "You're alive." Turning around to the fox, Sonic is greeted by two familiar eyes and two distinct tails. Before he can recover from his shock, Tails' eyes narrow in hurt and anger, demanding to know just where Sonic has been for the last 4 years. Why didn't he help fight against Eggman? Why did he disappear without any warning? Startled by the sudden barrage of questions, Sonic frantically tells Tails that he didn't even know it's been 4 years. He hasn't exactly had the time to consult a calendar. Tails asks what he's talking about, and Sonic explains about trying to use the green time stone to turn back his own time and that causing him and Amy to end up in this future. Shocked, Tails asks why the time stone would react like that, and why Sonic was trying to use it in the first place. Feeling guilty, Sonic tells him that he was just trying to go home to his family. Only further confusing Tails and causing Sonic to realize that he never actually told Tails he was from Earth. Face-palming himself, he tells Tails that it's a long story, so they should walk and talk. Sonic begins to tell his story as the two begin to make their way out of the mines. By the time Sonic has finished his explanation, the duo have arrived in Wonky Workbench. The place has certainly seen better days. The whole place has fallen into disrepair, with the metal that makes up the structure now being covered in rust. The machines that had once been used to create various household necessities now sparked and jittered, making Sonic want to stay far away from them. They carefully begin to make their way through the factory, with Tails using his mechanical know-how to open paths for them and Sonic providing cover. As they go, Sonic can't help wondering how things could have gone so wrong in just 4 years. Hadn't anyone else tried to stop Eggman? He couldn't possibly be that important to Mobius. He wasn't even born here. Seeing the look of sad confusion on Sonic's face, Tails begins to explain what's happened in the 4 years since his disappearance. Not long after Sonic vanished, Eggman launched an attack on the world from Little Planet, bringing with him an entire army of robots. At the head of this army was one particularly unique robot. It was blue and clearly designed to look like a hedgehog. Eggman had announced to the world that this was his greatest creation, designed and engineered to not only be Sonic's equal, but his better, Metal Sonic. Eggman didn't ever claim that Metal Sonic had killed the real Sonic, but he certainly hadn't corrected anyone that said so either. With the size of his army and the blow of losing their hero, resistance was next to non-existent. It's only recently that Tails and his friends in the Resistance have begun to make any headway in fighting back. But if Sonic can truly use the Time Stones to go back to when he and Amy got thrown through time, then they can change this future. They can stop Eggman's army before it's even made. Before they can continue their conversation, the two are interrupted by an old but very familiar voice. Eggman speaks to the two through the workbench's old, crackly speakers, chortling about how nice it is to have the Blue Menace finally here to witness his takeover. After all, it's all thanks to him that this is even possible. He'd been the biggest wrench to his plans, so when the Menace left, it left the door wide open for him. Now, as nostalgic as this little reunion is, I'm a very busy conqueror, so I'll just leave you to my right-hand bot. The moment he says that, the blue robot from before, who Sonic now knows is called Metal Sonic, drops down from the ceiling with a loud bang. Chortling, Eggman bids the heroes adieu before shutting down the speakers. The metal copy of the blue speedster glares at the two heroes despite his lack of facial movement. With what could be called excitement, he proclaims that he will at last be able to complete his original purpose and destroy his original. Sonic braces for battle, fully intending to face Eggman's copy, only for Tails to grab his hand and begin to drag him through the tunnels. Quickly catching on, Sonic begins to do what he does best, run. Together, the duo run through the winding halls of the factory as Metal gives chase. Throwing insults as swiftly as he throws attacks, he pursues them through the rusted metal factory, smashing through the very infrastructure of the building in his single-minded pursuit. The old, dilapidated building begins to groan loudly as more and more of its support system is destroyed. Tails shouts that the exit is just ahead as the building begins to buckle. The Fox shouts for Sonic to run ahead, knowing that he could easily escape the collapsing building. Sonic shakes his head, refusing to leave Tails behind. He grabs Tails' wrist and begins to speed up, dragging the Fox with him as he hears the thrusters of Metal Sonic right behind them and the groaning snaps and cracks of the building coming down around them. They're almost there. Just a little more. Just a little. Unable to stand any longer, the entirety of Wonky Workbench collapses in on itself. Amy's ear twitches, causing her head to shoot up and look around. She'd managed to get out of collision chaos with the red time stone a while ago, and had just been about to enter Tidal Tempest when something had caught her attention. It was a small thing, a whisper of sound carried on the breeze, but it almost sounded like... Shaking her head, she turns and enters Tidal Tempest. The first thing that hits her as she steps through the entrance is the foul smell wafting off the purple-pink water that splashes against the rusted metal path she's standing on. She's never smelled anything so putrid in her life. She remembers the stories she'd heard of this place. When people described it to her, they called it a mystifying water temple made of emerald and gold. It is impossible to see that grand temple in the dilapidated and polluted structure that now surrounds her. Tightening her grip on her hammer, she begins to make her way through the area, trying her best to stay away from the clearly tainted water. Not an easy task with how high the water is, causing it to block off many paths, sometimes even forcing her to descend into it in order to progress. This is, by far, the nastiest situation she has ever been in. When this is over, Sonic seriously owes her lunch. After what feels like forever, swimming and wading through putrid water, she finally reaches the next special ring and obtains the yellow time stone, bringing her count up to 3. Now all she needs to do is meet up with Sonic and Metal Madness so they can go back to their own time. She's just about to start heading for the exit when a voice begins echoing off the walls. Well, 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 you must be the Blue Rat's newest little friend. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid he isn't going to be collecting those time stones from you. He's been buried under other work. But don't worry, my friends and I will be more than happy to take them off your hands. As soon as the speakers shut off, an all-too-familiar robot descends from the shadows concealing the roof, its propeller whirring behind it. Without a moment of hesitation, Amy turns on her heel and begins to run, the Robo-Fox in hot pursuit. The robot seems to be trying a little bit harder to catch her this time, clearly learning from their last encounter. But Amy has learnt too, and is now using the vast array of debris as ammunition, hitting it with her hammer like a bat and sending it back into the face of her pursuer and buying her a little more time to get further away. Eventually, with a final round of sandstone to the face, the Robo-Fox flies off course and slams face first into a wall. Seizing this opportunity, Amy slips down a side passage before circling back and out the back exit. Once she's outside and no longer running for her life, she remembers Eggman's words. What had he meant by that? Could Sonic... No. She shakes her head firmly to dislodge that thought. Sonic is fine. They'll meet up in Metallic Madness like they planned, use the time stones, go back to their own time, and prevent this future from ever happening. Stealing her resolve and politely telling the worried, doubtful voice at the back of her head to shut up, she starts running. Sonic is okay. She's sure of it. But it wouldn't hurt to see him again just a little bit sooner. Well, if there's one thing that Amy can say about Metallic Madness, it's that it's a very fitting name. Everything in this place is made out of metal, and if there is any rhyme or reason to the structure of this place, Amy doesn't see it. Why would anyone install buzz saws, shrinking rays, falling platforms with spikes on the bottom, and metal poles with rotating blades in a place where the person in question does all of their operations? The number of times that Amy has had her life flash before her eyes because of one of those saws is ridiculous. It's like the place was lifted out of some horror movie. Does Eggman have a death wish? Or some secret back exit? Actually, that last one would make a lot of sense. Relief hits her like a truck as she spots the special ring. Invigorated by the knowledge that this will be the last one they need, Amy blasts through the trial, obtaining the teal time stone. When she exits the trial, however, she bites her lip. Where's Sonic? They were supposed to meet up in Metallic Madness, but she hasn't seen him at all. She's sure he's just running late, but then should she wait for him here, or should she wait somewhere else? A creak echoes behind her and she barely manages to dodge out of the way as a metal fox lunges at her. Pulling out her hammer, she prepares to knock the jerk's block off. But then, she hears something like a jet engine and is forced to jump out of the way again as, this time, something blue zooms past her. Amy stares, eyes wide with dawning horror as she watches a bright blue robot, designed to look like a hedgehog, come to a stop next to the fox. She listens numbly as Eggman's voice echoes over the PA system. She distantly decides not to dwell on why he would have something like that installed. His voice is smug as he tells her of his two greatest creations, completely mechanical replicas of his two greatest obstacles. Originally, Metal Sonic was meant to be a solo act, but then the Fox Brat had decided to be a thorn in his side as well. The rat's irritating defiance must have rubbed off on the boy back when they first met. But now, both of them are gone and there's no one left to stand in his way. Amy's grip on her hammer tightens as the tyrant's laughter echoes in her ears. You're wrong. Sonic and Tails may be gone, but I'm still here. I still have 4 of the time stones. I still have my hammer, my strength, and my hope. Sonic may be gone, but that doesn't mean that you've won, Eggman. I will gather the other time stones and stop this future from ever happening. And if that doesn't work, then I'll just have to beat your oversized button this time. One way or another, I'm finishing what Sonic and I started, and taking back our world. With a loud battle cry, she charges at the now dubbed Metal Sonic and Metal Tails, her hammer held tightly in her hands. Once she's close enough, she swings her hammer in a wide arc, while spinning on her heel in order to give her hammer a full 360-degree swing. The robo-replicas narrowly dodge the wide-reaching attack, before rushing in for their own attack. Amy slams her hammer onto the ground, propelling herself into the air and away from the oncoming attacks. Still clutching her hammer, she curls up and begins to spin in the same way Sonic would when performing a spin dash. Still spinning, she plummets to the ground, gravity pulling her down fast. The metals evade her hammer, but not the shockwave that's caused by her impact. Dust billows up and a bone-rattling boom echoes around the group. As the dust settles, Amy stands in the crater made from her impact, her eyes filled with determined fire, her hammer held tightly in her hands. There's not a single scratch on her, the only indication that she'd hit the ground so hard to cause a crater being the dust and rubble clinging to her dress and quills. Amy tenses as the metals rush her, preparing for their next attack, when something blue zooms right past her from behind. The thing slams into Metal Sonic, sending him into Metal Tails. As the two go flying, the blue thing bounces back, uncurling from its ball shape and landing on the ground, revealing itself to be a very familiar blue hedgehog. Sonic turns to look over his shoulder, but instead of looking at her, he's looking at something above her. Looking up, she sees a teenage fox with orange fur. He gives Tails a thumbs up, telling him that his aim is impeccable, before turning to Amy with an apologetic smile. Sorry it took us so long to get here, Ames. It took us a little longer than we expected to find the last time stone. To emphasize his point, he holds up the blue time stone. Amy laughs wetly, tears of joy and relief falling down her face. You've still got here, right? I'll count that as a win. Tails drops down next to the two hedgehogs, telling them to save the happy reunion for later and drawing their attention back to the robots. Sonic puts away the time stone and gets to his feet, standing alongside his two friends. There would be no running this time. The trio split into 3 different directions as the metals charge them, with Sonic going right, Amy going left, and Tails going up. In response, the metals also split up, each one going after their respective counterpart. Seeing the opening that the tin cans have given her, Amy whacks Metal over the head with her hammer while his focus is on Sonic. Metal Sonic staggers, its system seriously rattled by the blow. Capitalizing, Sonic spin dashes right into the robot's head, further rattling him. Then, together, Amy and Sonic slam into Metal Sonic's head from their respective sides, causing severe damage and forcing the robot to shut down. The two hedgehogs grin at each other before their attention is drawn to the fight going on over their heads. Tails is holding his own against his double, but with Metal Tails aiming at his tails, the team needs to put more focus on protecting them so he doesn't lose his flight. Amy turns back to Sonic at the call of her name and sees him holding a hand out to her. Catching on, Amy grabs his hand and holds on tightly as Sonic begins to spin on the spot. Soon, they're spinning so fast that Amy's feet are off the ground. At Amy's shout of now, the two let go of each other and Amy goes flying, like a hammer throw, right at Metal Tails. Once she's within range, she swings her hammer down, clocking Metal on the head and sending him towards the ground. Before Amy can begin free-falling from the loss of inertia, Tails catches her by her wrists. He holds onto her as they look down to see Metal Tails had managed to stop himself from hitting the ground and is now glaring up at them. Before the Metal Fox can charge them, Sonic zooms up behind him, slamming into his back and sending him up towards Tails and Amy. Grinning at each other, Tails lifts Amy up until she's able to jump off of his shoulders. Then, the two dive at Metal Tails, noticing that Sonic's attack had bent one of the propellers so badly it's practically useless. With the added weight of her hammer, Amy is the first to reach middle Tails, and swings her hammer to send him the rest of the way up to Tails. Once the robot is close enough, Tails swings his tails down, spinning his whole body into the movement to increase the impact. When his tails connect with the robot's head, all of that force sending him up now becomes directed down. There's a bone-shaking crash as the robot smashes into the ground, a crater forming around its body. There's a moment of silence as everyone catches their breath, their minds catching up with what just happened. Turning to the two boys, Amy throws her arms around them in a hug, her eyes once again filling with tears as she laughs with pure joy and relief. The moment is cut short, however, as Tails steps back from the hug, reminding the two that it's only a matter of time before the medals reboot or Eggman sends reinforcements. They need to return to their own time or this victory will mean nothing. Sonic looks at Tails with a worried frown, asking what will happen to him. Tails shrugs. He's not an expert on time travel. It could be that as soon as they go back, this whole timeline will disappear, him, Eggman, and everyone else along with it. Or they could be working on the multiverse theory and nothing will change this timeline. But Sonic and Amy will be returning to their own timeline and be able to save it. Amy's eyes are full of sadness and worry. If that's the case, then shouldn't they stay here to try and help take back the world from Eggman? Tails shakes his head with a grateful smile. If this timeline disappears, then that'll just mean that they wasted their time staying here any longer than they needed to. And if it's multiverse, then they can get back their world themselves. After all, their Sonic may be gone, but that doesn't mean that they're beaten. Sonic smiles proudly at Tails as he smiles back, before their wrists are grabbed by Amy, who pulls them in close and holds up a camera. Sonic idly wonders where she'd pulled that from before she snaps a picture of the three of them. Tails looks at her in complete confusion, asking just what that's for. Amy gives a bittersweet smile, saying that it's just in case. With that, she turns to Sonic, asking if he's ready to go. With a nod, the two pull out all of the time stones they've gathered. While 6 of the stones float around the two, Sonic holds the green one in his hand. After all, it wouldn't be a good idea to leave it behind. Closing his eyes, he focuses on the energy that he can sense inside the time stones in a single point in time. Drawing the power out, he allows it to envelop him and Amy. Tails watches as the light envelops Sonic and Amy, glowing brightly until suddenly it disappears, leaving behind 6 time stones and a few flickering specks of light. Good luck, you two. Eggman chuckles as he looks around at the little construction site that his robots are setting up. Little Planet is an absolute gold mine of resources. With all that this planet has to offer, he can easily create the weapon that will finally take out the Blue Rat. And best of all, the Blue Rat will never see it coming. Oh? Eggman's body goes completely rigid. Then, slowly, he turns to see 2 hedgehogs standing on the ledge above him, glaring down at him. One is male and blue, arms folded like Eggman is an inconvenience for him. The other is female, one hand on her hip while the other bounces a massive hammer on her shoulder. Oh, bolts. And that, everyone, is where I'm going to leave the story for now. Join me next time as Sonic and Tails go to investigate a mysterious island that fell out of the sky, and Amy goes on an adventure all of her own. I'm Rune. See you next chapter.